You're ready. Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Edinburgh, Chair of the Westborough School Committee. Today is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022. This meeting of the Westborough School Committee is called to order. I'm asking you to please stand if you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing following for a moment of silence. I'm calling for a moment of silence to honor the memory of the students and teachers killed in their elementary school in Uvalde, Texas yesterday. As a school community, we are particularly impacted by this mass murder, yet we also remember the Asian American victims in Southern California at their place of worship and mourn the loss of Black Americans in Buffalo, New York, while they moved through their everyday lives. So much tragedy, and therefore a pause to reflect seems appropriate. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty for all. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to notify everyone in the room with us tonight that this meeting is being recorded by Westborough TV. School committee meetings are available for remote viewing or listening on Westborough TV's government channels, Verizon 28 and Charter 192, and online on the Westborough TV YouTube channel. Thank you to Westborough TV for covering the broadcast this evening. We have with us tonight Superintendent Amber Bach, Assistant Superintendent Dr. Daniel Mayer, Director of Finance and Administration, David Gordon, Vice Chair of the Westborough School Committee, Steve Durrett, School Committee members, Stephen Batchelor, Raghu Nandan, and Kristen Vincent, Student Representative Andrew Chen. Recording Secretary Jen Benton is watching from remote viewing, and we have staff from the Westborough TV here tonight. So the agenda for this evening. We'll begin with an approval of reapprove minutes from the April 27th meeting, and then approve minutes from the May 11th regular session meeting. Then hear from Amber Bach with the superintendent's report, followed by the assistant superintendent's report, then the director of finance and administration's report. Then we'll hit you up with the school committee reports, followed by the building project updates. We'll then potentially hear from some citizens during citizens' requests. Then we'll recognize our student representative, Andrew Chen, followed by a special guest, Tammy Costello, the Director of Human Resources, for her newly established annual HR report, including the department development. Then we'll receive a social studies program review report from Dr. Daniel Mayer. Soon thereafter, we'll review the redlined versions of the student handbooks from the 6 schools. Then Dave Gordon will walk us through the high school chillers update, followed by Amber Bach's summary of superintendent's goals to be used for the evaluation. Then we'll finalize our 2022-23 school committee meeting dates, and finally wrapping up this open meeting with an approval of 2022-23 stipend list. Then we'll vote to go into an executive session this evening. So we'll begin with the approval of the amended April 27th meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Can you summarize what's to be amended?
Yep. Under Armstrong Roof Update and Capital, the third sentence should read as the following, quote, hope to seek funding from the town for an estimate of $1.1 million to replace roofing section. It was missing its dollars. Yep. Any other discussion? All in favor? I see a vote of 5-0, 5 being present. Now, do we have a motion to approve minutes from May 11th, regular session?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, any discussion? All in favor?
I abstain.
Oh, and we have one abstention. Oh, wait, do we have?
I abstain.
Okay, so there was a 3-0 vote with 2 abstentions. 3 were present that night. Okay, and moving right along. Superintendent's report. Amber?
Thank you very much. Good to see all of you. I have several updates. I want to start by thanking the faculty for doing such a nice job to be prepared today. We worked collaboratively with Westborough Police to make sure that they had an increased presence circulating at arrival, and were able to give us updates just around successful opening and closing at each of the schools today. One of the things we worked on last night following the news of the school shooting in Texas, as you mentioned earlier, was to make sure that we could, one, put out a communication to families that we would be prepared for the start of school and reinforce our safety protocols, while we were also prepared to be able to help students process questions should they bring things up. We sent thoughtful scripts for age appropriateness K-6 and 7-12. I just want to give a shout out to the faculty for coming in today and really bringing it, the energy, the focus, the thoughtfulness, and the support of students while they worked successfully and taught successfully through a meaningful day for students. I think it's just important to acknowledge that the sense of safety that they feel is compromised when they see things like this happen, and the sense of anxiety increases. And so I just think today there were teachers that were struggling across district, and I just want to acknowledge their professionalism and how well they managed the day. So we will continue kind of those routines moving forward through the next several weeks through the close of the year to make sure that our procedures feel reinforcing and safe to faculty on site with our door locks and the things that give people a sense of what ownership they can have over safety. There were a range of really kind of great things that went on today. One of the things last week that went on was the WHS, the Pops concert last week was so good. It was a combination of some arts, and Andrew might talk more about that. Do you have that in your report?
I do.
Okay, so the fine arts department hosted some art upstairs and some auction items and food, so it was very social, and people got to visit, and then they were then moving into the concert. It was a wonderful array of music across the ages of the high school and all the different groups. Just a fabulous night. So just a shout out to the quality of the performances, which are always so amazing, and I had a great time. Today at Mill Pond, it was Ranger Day, which was really a outdoor exploration of nature, hiking, knowledge of the outdoors, and different groups. There was shelter building, and it was just a very robust, well-planned day with a lot of parent input. And then they had some visiting geologists and just a whole array of academic and social opportunities for an enjoyable day. Moving into one or two updates regarding building project information. The Armstrong roof materials were delivered today. I communicated with families working with John this past weekend, and they were delivering materials and laying out the plans for working early morning hours before student arrival and getting up on the roof and starting work tomorrow, so that they'll be getting up there to do prep and different types of things. The materials are on site and we are off and running. So just thank you to John Mendes for a smooth start with that, and Kelly Giacopello, Assistant Buildings and Ground, who really has taken point on making sure that the start of that project is going really well. And then we received as well, Kelly delivered to Dave and I today the estimate for the grounds work at Armstrong in the playground area. You remember a substantial part of what we really need to do there is to try to deal with both the water filtration issues and the lack of the grade, right? And so he's got, John Fires made a proposal and actually will probably begin before the end of the school year on that project as well. We'll move kids to the upper playground area field to have recess through the close of the year so that we can get a jump on that project. So that's good news. And it feels good for both of those projects to be moving forward. And that's my report for this evening.
Well, that is great. Great news. And thank you, Dave, for all the work in these projects as well. So thanks. Moving forward. Daniel, do you have a report for us tonight?
I want to mention two distinctly different things. One at the high school on Monday, Amber and I went over there to see they have at break time, they had a dance kind of party for their 10-minute break, which was kind of fun to see. And we knew that there were a bunch of teachers, I don't know, it was like 20 teachers who had prepared to do a lip sync, as a going away present to the seniors. So, Andrew, I hope you felt the love. It was very festive during those 10 minutes. It was fun to be there and watch it all. And then also, I thought it was interesting getting some of the data back from doing the Dibble Scores, which is basically a phonemic awareness and phenomenological awareness test that we do on our young readers. The scores are much higher than they've ever been, which we attribute to the fact that we have a new phonics program that we implemented this year. So it's interesting to see the impact of that program already being felt. And I'll give you a more formal report on how we're doing in that regard in the fall, but if you'd like to hear that.
Well, that's great news too. Wow. I shouldn't be so surprised. I mean,
What's that?
I shouldn't be so surprised, but I'm surprised because the potential gap is not showing itself because of the new program, do you think?
I think when you explicitly teach phonics, then kids are going to do better on phonics testing. It's not rocket science. So we had a hole in our curriculum we plugged, like it was a little catch as catch can. I mean, there's some teachers that still need to catch up. It's actually, as we did the test, we can see where it's being implemented and where it's not, but it's clear when you implement it, it has an impact.
Great, that's great. Okay, so moving along, Dave, do you have any report for us this evening?
Just a brief update. Just wanted to keep you in the know related to the close of the school year. As we mentioned in past meetings, we're working diligently to make sure we close fiscally responsibly. And I would just wanted to give a shout out to my team, as it's pretty much an all hands on deck effort right now with the transition that occurred in the business office throughout the year. We pretty much have a well-organized machine up there, whereas we are backing each other up and we know each other's rules, and we're basically there to support each other as we close this year in regards to open purchase orders, ensuring invoices will be sent to us appropriately and timely. And then again, with the goal to, as Amber mentioned in the past, make sure we have some money available to do our prepay for our students with disabilities. So I just wanted to give you an update that we are working diligently on that. We're making progress in the right direction, and we hope to have some better numbers for you at the last meeting as well.
Well, that's good to hear as well. I feel like as chair, I see the business office more often. I'm visiting, and they look like a well-oiled machine and always working hard, so appreciate your leadership there. So moving on to school committee member reports. Am I in the right order? Yes. Andrew?
Okay.
For your final report.
Yes, it's very, okay. So to start off, there are a lot of events actually scheduled for tomorrow. Due to the weather, the Mill Pond Spring Festival, the Hastings Spring Festival, which was supposed to be last week, is now tomorrow, Thursday, which also happens to be the Mill Pond Spring Festival. In addition, at the high school, the Mr. WHS event will also be tomorrow. Tickets will be sold at the door for $10. So if you don't have your ticket, you can still get one at the door. Bales has they're collecting food pantry items for Sherry's house this week. And next week, their second grade will perform Going Buggy, which I still remember as a second grader performing. I'm sure it's kept this reputation as a very lively and fun event to attend. So I highly recommend everyone to go watch Going Buggy. They also have a third grade dance in the evening on June 3rd, and June 8th will be their field day.
My daughter Sarah was.
And some extra updates for the high school. A lot of events for like the seniors. It is our last day on Friday this week. Like I mentioned, Mr. WHS is tomorrow. Senior prom is Friday. Baccalaureate will be June 3rd, which is the day before graduation. Super excited to see all the musical performances there. And graduation will be June 4th. And yeah, that's, CMADA tournaments. A lot of teams, sports teams right now are in the midst of that. So good luck to all the sports teams competing in that. And that's all I have to report.
Great.
Well, thank you. Yep. Stephen Batchelor, do you have anything for this evening?
No, I have nothing to report tonight.
Kristen, Vincent.
Nope, nothing tonight. Thank you, Lisa.
Raghu Nandan.
No, nothing tonight. Thank you.
And Steve, did you want to wait for the building report?
Yes, please.
And I have nothing to report this evening. There are so many that I can't have them compete with each other. There are so many activities going on and very exciting end of the year things, but I'm going to keep it even by not reporting on it. So back to building project update. Steve?
Well, the good news is the project is still anticipating, quote, completion by the 24th of June. The weather's been pretty good, I think, as we all can admit, for once. For over the last year has been pretty terrible. But as a result of that, the hauling of soil from stockpiles at the water treatment plant back to the project site is nearly complete. The rough grading of the lower parking lot will occur shortly. They're preparing for the base pavement for the lower parking lot, which should occur within the next few weeks. We are working through, if you will, small credits that are returning to the project in the terms of the construction contingency, and these small savings and credits arrive as a result of not needing all the money that was allocated for various allowances. In other words, the best guess for something was set aside in the beginning of the project, and as the work was completed, small amounts are returned to the project by virtue of not being needed for those particular items. We still have a contingency in the project, although it is the construction contingency. No longer do we have any money left in the owner's contingency. And, if things continue to go the way they are, we are hopeful that we'll have some money left. There are items that continue to be, that we're working through, in particular, late delivery of certain things, particularly furnishing. It's been a tough period based on COVID and supply chain problems of delivery of various things on really unknown schedules. And so furniture still arrives from time to time. We're sorting out issues with the geothermal system. As the seasons now have changed from heating to cooling, we now have to troubleshoot the cooling side of the system to resolve issues associated with the way all the controls work. In particular, we've had some programming errors, if you will, that caused heat when it shouldn't have been, and so on, items like that. We hope to have that resolved. The contractor's working diligently to finish the cooling side of the geothermal system so the building will be air conditioned like it's supposed to. I guess I would comment on something that I think is quite amazing. The solar panels on the roof have created approximately 230 megawatt hours, megawatts being 1,000 kilowatts. That's equivalent to, if you assume your house uses 500 kilowatts a month, it's over 140 months worth of supply for a house, which is pretty amazing. And so, as I said, we're on schedule to complete the majority of the work. There'll certainly be punch list items on the second phase of the work, and there's a few punch list items left on the first phase for when we occupied the building in 14th of November, I think it was. So, so far so good. You never know. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that update. Does anyone have any questions for Steve at this time? Okay, we're moving right along. We're a little ahead of schedule here, but we're moving on to citizens' requests. As a reminder, we have a policy regarding citizens' requests. Some important pieces of this policy include that you must be a recurrent resident of Westborough. Speakers are allowed to address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview, Westborough School District budget or policy. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting. You are welcome to hand me additional comments in writing now or send them via email, and I will share them with the other school committee members. Public comment by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or a dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It is an individual's opportunity to express an opinion to school committee members on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us tonight. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise following a speaker is not allowed. A reminder that if not following the policy, this may cut into your time. Additionally, I want to remind members of the school committee that when making a point of order, please address your concern to the chair initially rather than to the speaker. Is there anyone here tonight that wishes to make a statement to the school committee? Come forward and speak into the microphone, state your name, street address.
Mike Matthew, 20 Andrews Road. Good evening. I'm not going to repeat what I had said at the last school committee meeting on May 11th, but I had asked for some guidance and assistance from the school committee and Amber as to how we would answer parents with some of their concerns as a result of the March 19th town meeting. So I'd just like to take the opportunity today. Amber, Daniel Mayer, and Steve were gracious enough to spend some time with some concerned parents and helped us through some of our questions. So I just wanted to thank you for that time that you donated to help us. And we left it that we still have some other topics that we'd like to discuss, and Amber and I are going to connect on some scheduling. So again, thank you for your time for that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for citizens' request? Okay, just come up, state your name and street address, and speak into the microphone, please.
Hi, I'm Steve Budaleri. I live at 9 Thomas Newton Drive. A few of us met with the superintendent's office and some teachers and Steve Durrett this morning, and we talked about some concerns we have about what's being taught in Westborough schools. I thank them for their time and look forward to continued discussions. Now I want to bring some concerns to the school board. In light of the anti-racism strategy on which Westborough schools have embarked, I'm concerned about the focus on race and the implication of systemic and rampant racism, such that such a strategy incorporates into its teachings of teachers and thus teachings to the students. Anti-racism is defined primarily by Ibram Kendi and leveraged by other authors like Robin DiAngelo. Among other things, Kendi defines and characterizes anti-racism as such: you must look at everything that in the world by race, and that in order to be anti-racist, all outcomes must be equal by race. Racism is normal. It is part of every single interaction. If you say you are against racism, Kendi says, then you are a racist. That America is an extremely irredeemable racist country. It says that all white people are racist. It says that whites are oppressors and non-whites are victims. It says your skin color defines you as a person, that American ideals like free speech and hard work or meritocracy are racist, that capitalism is racist, that the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. This is anti-racism as defined by Kendi. If these concepts are not being taught in Westborough, then why call it an anti-racist strategy? Why are all the resources in the strategy and recommendations to the teachers, this is right in the strategy from last year, why are they all about anti-racism, and why are no resources provided for teachers to use that refute the anti-racist perspective? Black scholars like Thomas Sowell, Bob Woodson, Shelby Steele have written books, made videos, and have programs that show a completely opposite view of race in America. Why does the WPS system not promote these like it does the anti-racist resources? And why give students surveys that focus on the concept of anti-racism? That to me supports the fact that the focus is on race and anti-racism. Some of the questions are, teachers have encouraged me to learn about people from different races, ethnicities, and cultures. Why is this a survey question that needs to be asked? My school helps students speak out against racism. Not all people, it's not the role of schools to help speak out against racism.
I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, and your 3 minutes is up.
Thank you.
Is there someone else here for Citizens for Us? Feel free to come up, state your name, street address, and please speak into the microphone.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. Defending sovereignty, that's the way you say it. The fight of our lifetime. Continuous vigilance and vigorous support of states' constitutional rights are critical. The use of federal tax dollars to control states may be a more persistent and pernicious issue. As an example, the Department of Education allocates taxpayer funds based on the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, goals or other reforms, thereby controlling and harmonizing certain aspects of education in the USA across all states. In the example of COVID lockdown policies and masking, it is quite clear that the CDC and the NIH have overstepped federal powers again and again by leveraging federal tax dollars to create perverse financial incentives within hospitals and to promote dis, and malinformation and to promote propaganda on both old and new media. It is time to return to the rule of law and return the power back to the state to regulate medicine, public health, and education. States must remember that federal funding is not the be-all, end-all. If the state can develop the political will to refuse such funds, if plans can be made to mitigate the impact of such an action, these tax kickbacks are often weaponized in an arbitrary and capricious way by the federal executive branch to illegally control state policies, including public health and education policies. State leaders who are willing to walk away from federal funding, who are willing to work with other states and Congress to negotiate better terms for federal dollars, may offer the best hope for breaking this federal overreach. Individuals can have a huge role in working to ensure our freedoms, our sovereignty as a nation by writing letters, funding legislators, publishing independent articles and memes. Even just reposting on social media can help. We are all in this fight together. Individuals must organize, join groups and organizations, and create new groups and organizations.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
I believe citizens' request is a citizen's opportunity to address the school committee members, and I feel like the speaker now is just talking to the wider audience that's watching.
Are you speaking to us?
Yes.
Okay, so it does sound, I couldn't help but think that you're talking about something in general, but are you speaking to the committee about something that is our purview? What do you think?
The purview is that the federal government is offering funds to the school, to the town, in order to control what you guys put in the curriculum.
Okay, but your comments on we must organize and we must fight back, you're not talking to us.
Sure.
I would like you to just...
Let us all organize together in order to break the chains of the federal government holding us to their dogma that they present.
Okay, thank you for making that clear. I appreciate it.
Organizing into groups that can work collectively to get the truth out is another way.
We have another point of order.
Madam Chair, how long has his time been?
2 minutes and 40 seconds. I did pause it for a couple of moments just so we could clarify, but you've
Okay.
got 20 seconds left.
Okay.
But did you have another question?
Well, no, I just, we're not the federal government.
We are not. It is true. Boyd,
Okay,
we are
thank you.
not the federal government. He is correct.
We, as the school board, you're taking federal government funds. You're deciding whether yes or no to take federal government funds. That's the point. They're controlling you by funding you. Take the other stuff with it that comes with the funds. We've talked about this multiple times here. There's no question that this is relevant.
I'm sorry, your time is
purview.
up, but thank you for sharing that with us.
Oh, I thought you were asking me questions. Could I finish my
I'm so
paragraph
sorry.
here?
No,
Okay.
there were points of order, and that was completely acceptable. Thank you. So is anyone else here for citizens' requests? Okay, so we'll move right along. Next on our agenda is to recognize our student rep, Andrew Chen. We want to thank you for your due diligence throughout the year, reporting about the happenings of our schools and voicing your opinions about other matters regarding school policy and operations. And we want to wish you wonderful luck and big success in the future, and congratulations are in order for, graduation and your next steps in life. We have a few things for you. For those who don't know, he's our liaison to the school committee, and he's been here all year. We have we should show you the infamous W blanket.
You can cuddle up in that at school.
Not many receive such grand.
I'm trying to make it to 10 years for the blanket. I'm hanging in there. I want the
I'm bringing
blanket.
that to senior sunrise tomorrow morning.
Go, you can wrap up in that.
Yeah.
And we
Thank
have
you
a little,
so much.
we have a little gift from the borough, Sugar Shack, of course. Is there anyone else who would like to say some comments for Andrew? Thank you.
Andrew, I just want to acknowledge how on point you've been all year to take the lead to get help and support of student volunteerism in your role, and as both a member of all the other clubs and organizations and work you do. I appreciate your really active, focused work in that, while you also served as a liaison here. And I really appreciated your sense of presence and the contributions you made during your time. Wish you well, and I want to thank you. I'm really glad you got to be our rep.
Thank you guys so much. It has been such an honor being here. The experiences and connections that I've made here were probably invaluable. I'll remember this for the rest of my life, honestly. So just thank all of you for letting me be a part of the school committee and just be able to have a voice on the school committee. So thank you guys.
Andrew, you don't know how many times you made me say, I've got nothing tonight. I'd come here prepared for all the events that happen, and at the end of the day, just to find out that you covered them all.
Andrew, I knew you were going to be an amazing student rep when one of the first nights you were here, Ms. Dulé and I were talking about the book of Mass General laws that apply to education is like this thick, and we both had our copies of it, and you were like, what's that? And Ms. Dulé said, here, and you were actually excited to receive it. So since then, you've definitely been invested in what's happening here, and just I appreciate your viewpoints on what's happening at the high school with your classmates and bringing that information here, so thank you so much.
Yeah, I want to echo that. It's been such a pleasure having this opportunity to work with you. You know, you're a real wonderful example for high schoolers in town, and we just love having a student representative here. So thank you for all of your hard work, your diligence, your dedication, and you know, I know that you're going to excel in the future. So best of luck to you. Thank you.
Anyone else? And keep playing that great tennis, because extraordinary.
Oh, the team is amazing, yeah.
Smart and
So good.
highly talented tennis player. Okay, so we're going to move right along. We have Tammy Costello here giving us a human resources report on the department development.
So I assured Tammy that you're a receptive and kind audience, and it's her first official presentation here as our new Director of Human Resources. And I, you know, set the context that when somebody's bringing you their first report, it gives us a chance to benchmark what they put in it, and we can continue to enhance it and make it a good fit. And this will be her slot for the annual end of year report. So I'll turn it over to Tam.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to share with you my philosophical view and operational approach to human resources in the Westborough Public Schools. Tonight, I will discuss my philosophy on human resources, the HR team, COVID's impact on human resources, substitute and absence management, recruitment and hiring, equity-forward hiring practices, our HR databases, our FTE breakdown of staff, and focus moving forward. I started my career in hospitality many years ago, and then I transitioned into education, human resources, and I've always viewed HR as a customer service function, with our 700 plus employees being our customers of the ancillary departments. We operate on a 10 and 2 schedule, which means 10 months of the year, September through June, we are focusing on hiring, retaining, benefiting, and meeting the needs of the school year personnel. And then July and August, we have about 55 employees that set up the house to do it all over again for the next school year. In a nutshell, we serve the staff and the staff serves the students. I view my most important role as having our staff feel valued and respected and given the tools they need to do the best work with our students. My team is a lean, not mean, HR machine, getting the various HR tasks for the district done. The district is comprised of me, Tammy Costello, my HR coordinator, Bernadette Noel. We have an HR generalist, Kathleen Lungarini, that I share with David and his team. And we work in concert with the finance department, especially payroll, as employee compensation falls under both HR and finance. COVID-19 impact on human resources. So I could spend the next 45 minutes to an hour talking about this, and I did delete several of the slides for your pleasure and mine. COVID's biggest impact has been on staff absences and coverage. I've been doing this for a number of years now, and it has been extremely challenging. First, we had 10-day quarantining, which led to 5-day quarantining, which is really 6 days because the first day counts as day 0, so you have 6-day quarantining. And it has caused significant staffing challenges. On top of that, staying on top of the endless changes to protocols by the CDC and DESE and the Board of Health has been nothing short of a major learning curve for myself and many people in education human resources. Mid-year this year, we rolled out flexible masking and we provided a small number of accommodations for our medically compromised staff and students. And substitutes, which I'll talk about in a minute, we have a smaller substitute pool, and this burdens the schools, making it necessary for them to creatively cover our classrooms. The challenges with COVID will continue with each spike, which we are in right now. So every time I think we're getting better, then we have a spike, then we get better, then we have a spike. But COVID will continue to be something that needs to be managed, which I will manage, which the district will manage. In order to meet the demand of COVID absences, substitute procurement is more important now than ever before. Our on-call substitute posting has remained open all year, and I've hired 37 substitutes to date since I began in late October, which I wish I could have hired double that, to be honest. One way that I endeavor to increase our substitute pool is outreach to our staff to find more substitutes, often asking our staff if they have any college kids who are interested in substituting, or retirees, or parents. And a lot of our substitutes are parents of our students. So there is a constant trying to increase the substitute pool, and that will continue. I do targeted assigning of substitutes to multi-day absences, and I do this to provide consistency for both the students and the staff. So priority right now is placed on absences that are multi-day, which currently is 5 days in most cases with quarantining. I also monitor substitute performance by collecting feedback from the schools. I have an open line of communication with the principals, the assistant principals, the office staff, to get feedback on substitutes and make adjustments if necessary. One of the largest and most important roles of my job is recruiting and hiring. And we've made some changes to our job postings in that now when you go to our website, there's a tab right on the home page that you can click on and you will see the job postings, making it easier to find the job postings. We also are part of the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education, known as MPDE. We are one of 40 districts that were chosen to be part of this consortium. And so now I have added that logo to our postings so we can highlight our commitment to equity hiring. I do have the job postings here. If you've never had a chance to look at them, Daniel will show you what it looks like. This is when you go to our homepage. Daniel, if you can move other way, just so they can see the top, yeah. So when you go to our website, this is a list of our jobs. It's constantly changing. This is an actual listing of what we currently have. Applicant goes in, all they have to do is apply, and then it brings them through the whole process. Our jobs, and you can go back whenever, Daniel. Our jobs are posted for 7 to 10 days before interviews occur. All our teacher finalists must demonstrate a lesson before a decision is made. And then once we actually hire someone, HR completes all aspects of onboarding. And if you don't know what onboarding is, it includes all the processing of the legal and benefit and retirement and payroll paperwork, as well as setting the new employees up with all their various logins, as well as taking their picture and making sure they get a badge, and several other tasks, but most importantly, making sure they're ready to walk through the door on their first day with everything they need. Equity forward hiring practices and staff training. This is another large focus and part of my job. This year, we brought in 2 consultants to work with our staff and students on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as diversity hiring strategies. In addition to that, I also did training with our leadership team on equity forward hiring practices in preparation for the hiring season, which we're currently greatly in the throes of right now. We are focusing on applicant resume review, as that is our first opportunity to find diverse candidates. And we are currently striving to change the paradigm from wanting a good fit candidate to a candidate that's a cultural add to our community. HR databases and data synchronization. We have 6 databases that we use in human resources to get all the various tasks done. Munis is our HRIS, our Human Resources Information System, and it's also our finance database. Applicant tracking is software that we use for job postings and hiring. Records creates digital portions of the personnel folders. Absence management is for absence tracking and substitute hiring and management. Professional growth database is for professional development and the evaluation of our teachers and administrators. PowerSchool is our student database and staff data for state reporting. And some of these databases are integrated. PowerSchool synchronizes with absence management and professional growth each night on the overnight, and it populates these databases, eliminating duplication of entering and deactivating staff. We also have data from absence management that gets imported into Munis so we can pay our substitutes, as well as the data from absence management goes into Munis to track people's accruals, which is sick time, vacation, and personal. So there is some synchronization between the databases, but I'm hoping we'll continue to do more of that. This is an FTE snapshot from mid-January, and it's important to note that FTE counts are variable. It is a snapshot, and this data is somewhat difficult to pull from Munis. However, we are working on a more fluid reporting of FTE data for the school committee using the data that we report to the state for EPUMs. So it will be consistent with the data that we're already reporting. And you will see this data at a later meeting. But if you want to just take a minute to look at this, the way I broke down this data, we have 7 unions. So those are the first 7 groups you see. And then we have about 50 employees that are non-union. And you can see our largest group of employees. My brain thinks in terms of employee groups. So our teachers is our largest group with 436. This was back in January. Our paraeducators, we have 134. Our paraeducators are separated into special education paraeducators, and then we have about 34 of them that are general ed, which is noon aides, tech aides, kindergarten, and library. But this just gives you an idea of the breakdown of our staff. You can also see that our number of our FTEs is very close to the number of people, which is indicative of most of our staff is full-time. So your FTEs is always either going to equal the number of people or be less. It can never be more. If it is, I've done something wrong mathematically. So this shows you that the majority of our staff is full-time. You have some part-time paraeducators bringing the FTEs down a little bit, and you have some part-time teachers bringing it down. So that is just a look at our FTEs. The things I'd like to focus on moving forward is continuation of some of these things. I would like to see more digitalization of our employee folders. Currently, parts of the employee folder are digital, and we still have many parts that are paper. We have a new system that we just got last year, so we're moving towards that. I would love to see additional synchronization between the databases to even cut down on more, cut down on errors and cut down on duplication. continued outreach to attract the best applicants, a commitment to equity hiring, managing COVID, which that will stay on there for quite a while, I think. Expanding the substitute pool, which is also going to stay on there for quite a while. And monitoring FTEs and staffing. That's it. Any questions?
Have some.
Raghu?
So, has the, as I own my own company too, hiring has been extremely difficult. How is it from your side?
Hiring in general?
Or in general, finding the right candidates?
It has been extremely difficult, both from a substitute standpoint, which is important, but more important is our permanent staff. There is still a lot of concern out there about COVID, so that reduces the number of people who are willing to apply and be in the schools. Now, it is getting better, but there is that situation, certainly in the substitute pool. Our 3 major substitute groups are retirees, which is almost down to 0 at this point because the retirees are nervous about COVID, so they don't want to be in the school. And then college students only come and go. This time of year we have them, which is great. And then you have parents. Last year when we had the hybrid, when you had students in school only 2 days, parents had to stay home with their kids, so that greatly reduced the substitute pool. Now this year is better. We're back in on-site full-time, which is great, but the increase or the bounce back we were hoping to see of staff ready to get back out there hasn't happened yet. But I will say we are in a very robust hiring season. I've done a lot of postings and we've done a lot of hiring in the past 2 weeks, and there's been some really encouraging number of applicants for certain positions. Some positions are harder to fill than others, but there's been several that have been great, really good response. And it's 10 o'clock at night and I'm looking and I'll say, oh, there's 70 now, wow, so there have been some really good, but it's slow.
All right. On your onboarding, do you employ any solution for onboarding? Because it's a manual process. It's a tedious process.
So onboarding is extremely important, part of human resources, and we moved to this new database last year, this new software system. So it is electronic now, and that has streamlined it. It also has had its challenges because not every person is tech savvy, so we've had to help people with that. But the onboarding process that we currently have and that we're moving towards is better, but we're not there yet.
Is there an offboarding solution too for people who leave?
There's not a software offboarding solution currently. It's more knowing when it comes to onboarding someone, you have about 20 tasks you have to do, and when you offboard, you have about 4 to 6, depending on the person. So we just know what we need to do to offboard. Okay. However, offboarding is, I don't want to say as important as onboarding, but it is very important that we get people off the payroll when they leave and that they don't stay on the payroll. So there's not as much of a need for a offboarding software. The number one question that I've always been asked and that everyone wants to know is, why do you have all these different databases? Why can't you have one software system? And if I could invent one software system that did all these functions, I would quit and move to an island because I would be a billionaire. But the problem is each and every one of these databases were written and designed for the function that they perform. And if we were to go to just one company that did it all, we would lose a lot of the functionality. So that creates the need for synchronization between the databases, which we are doing and will continue to do more. And it creates better outcomes, I feel, for our staff.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much for this presentation. It was very eye-opening to know what goes on behind the scenes. You are a behind-the-scenes person. So it's just fascinating what it takes to run a company of 700 employees with like 4,000 clients. My question was around substitutes, like for you and thinking about the current state of education with COVID, impacting attendance. What is like a good number of substitutes that would be a good number to have?
So we have 65-ish right now. I would love to have 110, okay. Even 100 would be nice. The problem that we're having and that we'll continue to have, and people sometimes forget this, not always, is that, right now we're running between 20 to 25 staff members a day out with COVID, which is high. But the substitutes are getting COVID as well, so it's proportional. So you have a large number of staff out with a smaller substitute pool. So if I could get to 100, that would be great. I'm just not there yet. We need more subs. We really do.
Okay, thank you.
How are you managing with that many absentees?
We have a great group of principals and assistant principals and paraeducators. So what the normal standard is, if there's a classroom teacher, you can't have a classroom uncovered, or else you'd have kids running around with scissors and glue. So you have paraeducators that will fill in for the teacher, and you have general paraeducators, sometimes special educators filling in for the teacher. You have a lot of assistant principals and principals running around filling in. It's been challenging, and I applaud the schools for doing the job that they've done, because I have often felt that I wish I could do a better job with substitute coverage, and right now it is challenging.
Is there a way we can have a consortium of schools from the neighborhood pull the substitutes together? And
so the interesting thing is that
no, we want them all to our side. No. It's a secret Westborough pool only. We're always competing with the other districts. So you're nudging your substitute pay a little bit higher than theirs, and you want them to come work only for you.
Yeah, and last year, I wasn't in Westborough then, I was in a different district, but many districts, and I know Westborough did too, increased the substitute rate of pay in anticipation of knowing the devastating effect COVID was going to have, and they did. Now, the system we use is called frontline absence management, and the benefit of that system for substitutes is that they can have one log-on for many districts, and they can pick and choose their jobs under one login. The benefit of that for me is I can see if a substitute is subbing at another district. And I can, not that I do this often, but I can say, I see that you have a 1-day job next week. I have a 9-day job for you. Any interest? And, but don't do that often. I don't do that often. But that's, so as far as frontline absence management, it's the biggest substitute procurement and absence management system, I think, in the country. So we can see that. But as far as a consortium, to Amber's point, everybody is trying to keep the subs and get the subs in their district. So obviously we want to reach out to people that are in the local area, because that's where you're going to draw your subs from, is you don't want a sub that has to drive 45 minutes to get to work, or an hour.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I do want to just commend you for putting together a lot of data. I really appreciate the FTE breakdown and just being able to evaluate what you do day to day and look at a year-round view of bringing us a report every year. This is a great start, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll definitely add to it. I mean, I think we'll look at cycles where we can give you data on how many people we hired between, September 1 and the end of the year. How many, the data around turnover, I mean, it's all pieces of what we can look at. I think it's nice to be able to think about some succinct snapshots that are productive for you. And to Tam's point, we'll work with, at the next meeting, providing the FTE data for a more extended look. I think it's important, as she said, before we put it in front of you, that we can cross-reference it ourselves to make sure that the data we have at the state level can be unpacked. And Scott Henderson is a person who submits all of it, so he wants to look at what I submitted and what they're showing to make sure that we feel confident that we can answer questions. And so that's where he is right now. It's very hard to get the data aligned with the state, but it feels unproductive to me to have different numbers floating around out there. So we're using that after some good thought. And I think at the next meeting, we'll start to formulate that with the objective goal that it would become part of her standing report. So this would be the time when you would see it and would give us kind of end of the year data before we, follow up with the state again.
And to Amber's point, I didn't do a slide on this. I'm in autopilot right now, but since July 1st, we've hired 126 people and we've separated 132. So we're just about even. And you say 126, but that is every level of employee. So that's where we're at. So I pulled that earlier today.
Yeah.
The driver for the people leaving. Do you do an exit interview with them to find out why they're leaving?
We have not started exit interviews, but we have exited interviews, higher level roles to find out why they're leaving, but we don't do it for every single employee. We might move towards that. I tend to think more in terms of trends. If we saw a mass exodus from a certain department or a certain school, then we certainly would look into that. That hasn't been the case. I tend to be really big and heavy on trends and putting systems in place to address trends that we're seeing.
Yeah, obviously my point being is that if there's a flaw somewhere that we could discover using that method to fix it, it would be,
Yes.
I guess, a good tool.
I concur. I mean, exit interviews is very important. At least the manager of the employee, could have 30 minutes would be invaluable to find out if there's a gap somewhere.
Certainly something that we will
And you
consider.
I don't want to, speak over what you're saying. I'm assuming you know for the most part why people leave, like that there's a general overview of knowing.
Yeah,
why
I think in
people
most
leave. Yeah.
cases, separation we know. And in some cases, there's always things you do or don't know. But I think, we can certainly look at, strategic discussion with people to understand. I think we do that. We definitely do some of that, but could do it in a more systematic way.
From my experience, what I found out is when they leave, they're much more open to say why they are leaving.
Right,
And
right.
be really frank about it.
Yep.
Other than that, it's only a guesswork that we are doing why they left.
So,
that's very
yeah.
important. That's extremely important.
The number one reason, at least that I've seen this year, because I ask when the teachers are leaving, the number one reason we've seen this year is commute. So commute is a very important thing for teachers. But there are other factors. There are always other factors.
Well,
Yeah, and obviously that one, at $5 a gallon, it makes a big difference whether you're 3 miles away or 25 miles.
Right, and we're an early morning industry, so on top of that, when you've got to commute it really, I did it for years, and it's, it's early, so.
And there's always the opportunity to fill the positions, and I really appreciate your commitment that you've made to the initiatives that have been set before you. And, I can see that you've really been wholeheartedly trying to change things over time, and perhaps the people leaving create an opportunity for us to fill those positions equitably.
Yes.
So
I think
appreciate that.
the best thing, or one of the best things that could occur, would be if our beautifully diverse student population would be able to look up at their teachers and their custodians and lunch ladies and administrators and assistant principals and see a reflection of themselves more proportionately than we currently are at. And that's certainly something we're striving towards.
Well, thank you. I appreciate all that you're doing,
Thank you,
and
Tam.
I appreciate you being here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move
And you
right
can go
along
home. You don't have
to the
stay.
Social
That's why you can
Studies
go home. That's why we're
Program
here.
Review Report. Daniel, you want to take us through that?
I sure will. Let me get that queued up here.
She's like very relieved right
So I
now.
put it in a form of a memo to you, and this is, the context here is, as you know, that we completed a social studies review and presented a report to the school committee back in May of 2017. And there's a hyperlink there for you to take a look at the original report. And the reason I'm back before you tonight is that report had a series of recommendations, a request for some resources, and an implementation timeline. And so I want to review with you a little bit what those recommendations, resource requests were, and the timeline. And one obvious factor is May 2019. We basically had about 2 years set as our original goal for our implementation, but then COVID hit within, several months of the school year closed down. We started up the 2019-20 school year, and then in March of that year, COVID hit. So we've made tremendous progress, although we have definitely been slowed down in some respects. So the recommendations, just to refresh your memory, having to do with curriculum instruction that were, this is word for word from the end of the report that was submitted to you, was that, we needed to move away from the old transmission-based model of instruction where you're giving facts and figures and memorization, and move to a more active, creative, analytic based environment where our curriculum was emphasizing critical thinking skills, analytic skills, synthesis, creativity, use essential questions and have deep thinking be part of what the students were engaged in. And in order to get to that creative place where you're doing that deeper thinking, there was a call to pare back on the amount of content that would be covered, and sort of needing to determine what was like essential to know as a from nice to know. And there's plenty of timelines and geography to memorize, but what is it that is of the highest value to be an educated citizen, to move forward, to be successful in as a elementary student or a high school student. And so sometimes we would go too far in emphasizing content that was just memorization of what would be kind of trivial pursuit of things. And so pare back on that. And then there was a big push and look at the middle school, high school curriculum, and a recognition that in our high school, we taught US 1 and US 2, and they get some world history in grade 9. That's kind of got some world history embedded there, but we did not have a world history course. You're not required to take social studies or a history course in senior year, so you have 3 years to require an education. And part of what we wanted to do, we had 2 twin goals, and one was to ensure that when they were studying U.S. history too, that students were not stopping with World War II, and that they had a better understanding of the current issues of the day, so that they had a framework with which to look out and understand the world they're living in. So going beyond Vietnam and actually trying to bring them to present in terms of, and the other piece we wanted to do is bring in some curricula, some of the, looking at the state standards, looking at world history, make sure that they understood 3 main units we wanted to put in that are emphasized here. Is that we wanted them to make sure they understood the role that the Cold War played, the era of globalization and what that meant, and the basically reactionary phase that we're currently in terms of anti-globalization, which now is this sort of period of populism and conflicts, genocide and terrorism, and to have that be part of the curriculum too. Again, so we're creating students that we want to be citizens that understand the world they're living in. So those were the major recommendations of the curriculum piece of the report. There was a piece about electives that I have there, number 5, continue to add electives like senior year and junior year that promote citizenship and focus on local and global issues. And so those are the curriculum, substantive curriculum changes we were looking to make. And then we asked for the hiring of a pre-K 6 social studies curriculum coordinator as a resource ad. For the last 2 years, we had it put in an innovation position. We had used and took a teacher from the classroom and had that teacher play the role of curriculum coordinator in social studies, but you were convinced of the need of the position, and for next year, it's a permanent position. Also, that we had certified, we did not have all of our students being taught in the Gibbons Middle School by certified teachers because of the way the teaming was structured there. So the committee accepted our recommendation to make sure we had enough resources to hire and to have teams that were large enough that would have certified social studies teachers on them, just continue with our heterogeneous grouping at the high school in the core subjects. Those were all resource-related issues. And then there's the timeline piece of wanting to have our full transition to our new curriculum by last school year would have been 2021. And really, everything stalled in terms of, especially at the secondary level. And the reason, during COVID, and I say especially at the secondary level, is by putting in that innovation position at the elementary level, that person then was by definition given time to write and reflect and modernize and the curriculum, whereas the teachers who are at the secondary level are teaching and they're not full-time coordinators and curriculum developers. The department heads have at the high school .2 release, and that just they didn't have enough time to make substantial kind of improvements. So I guess let me just give you the full overview of the progress to date. That again, at the K-6 or pre-K-6 position, I would say grade levels, we have made substantial progress. There's a presence for social studies on our website for parents to look at, to see all the curriculum units that we have at each of the grade levels, how we are, sort of what we are emphasizing in terms of skills. Not only is there that forward-facing presence on the website in terms of curriculum, but there are unit and lesson plan documents that have been created that every teacher has access to. And there has been a fundamental shift in terms of the content of what is being taught at each grade level, so that it's not Thanksgiving K, 1, 2, 3, every year learning about the Pilgrims again. There's more of a systematic progression of learning. You've heard a little bit about the mock trials, which fits very much into that need to, develop the analytic skills of even our youngest kids. I want to emphasize, and it doesn't get said enough, and I'm going to say it needs to be said time and again, because I think people look at our school system and the curriculum coordinators we have, and they have some assumption that having a curriculum coordinator for social studies and science and math and ELA is some kind of luxury. And in a high-quality school system where you have 90 teachers who are all generalists, and you bringing in new teachers every year, and those are our core teachers. I'm not even talking about special needs teachers or ELL teachers. The math is very convincing. If you want those 90 teachers to sort of have a coherent conversation and set of expectations about what it is that they're teaching in each of their subject matters, a 90-to-1 ratio for a coordinator in a curriculum field to 90 different generalists is not a bad ratio. Now, several districts have opted for their curriculum coordinators to be exclusively 6 through 12. And that, you know, I think you understand that that's fundamentally different, because the people who teach 6 through 12 are by definition not generalists but specialists in their field. They're certified in social studies. So I just want to remind you of why it is that the curriculum coordinator was put into place and is so effective at creating those resources. And she's been able to go into the classrooms, do model lessons, put out the resources, and then help our new teachers in particular, and our coordinators play a fantastic role during the first 3 years. When our teachers come on who are new, they sit and they co-plan units, and they make sure they see where the resources are, and they look at their teaching and talk it through with them. And it's a tremendous benefit to our students and our families that our coordinators play that role. So I think we have made more substantial impact in terms of curriculum development at K-6. The implementation piece we had to back away from until this year. We put a big emphasis on Kristen Robertson is our coordinator, going and working directly with the teachers this year and being able to do professional development and have them understand the teachers, what resources she's created and how they're, the spirit in which they're written and how to actually use them. So the grades 7 through 12, we have successfully pushed some of the units of American history down to grade 8 and into grade 9, and freed up our ability to go to present in world history too. But there is still work to be done to bring in those globalization, those 3 world history units. And there's recognition that needs to happen by the end of next year. Finally, I would say we've also made progress in new, I listed on page 2 of the report here, the new electives that we've put in at the high school. Civics case studies is one of the electives, a full year community-based sociology course, a full year psychology course, intro to criminal justice, and American pop culture and identity. So those are all some nice new electives that have been created. So that's my update.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Daniel?
I have a comment.
Raghu?
It's very important that we have the coordinator in social studies to impart the analytical and critical thinking. In my mind, for example, it's not enough to teach our kids that more than 7 million Jews were killed during World War II. It's more important for our kids to learn how Hitler could convince ordinary Germans that it was the right thing to do, how he could convince them. That's more important than just learning about the history. So critical and analytical thinking is very important for us to grasp what happened in full reality than just learning history.
Agreed.
And that is in the 9th grade history curriculum of how he came to power and how each one came to power. That's what that globalization, you had it in your report of the 3 things that led, but it is pretty solid. So I have a quick question about if the rewrite of the curriculum, and based on what you said about the coordinator, is that the social studies teachers from 7 through 12 will be writing the curriculum. Is that true, that they're going to be writing the new material? Or is that what I'm reading in the implementation process?
Yes.
Okay. And that'll be happening in the next year?
Yes.
Okay, and then so my last question is, it says that you anticipate the units being added, the Cold War, the era of globalization, et cetera, that's going to happen next year, but they're not going to change the course titles until the following year?
Yes.
Why is that? That's what I was curious about. Like, why not change the title if you're changing the course?
Well, students are already registering, and when I was preparing my report, I noticed that they didn't change the title. And I reminded the chairman of the history department that we had an agreement that that title was going to change, and as well as the content.
So the content has changed, but the title hasn't. And that's,
Well, the global, the world history piece needs to be put in there, and again, so that, I mean, U.S. history becomes world history really post World War II to some degree, and especially starting in the 90s. But yes, it's
Okay.
it's a slower than we hope transition. But again, I've explained the context. You know the context.
the important part is the content. Like,
Yeah.
the important is what are you going to teach them? That's great. Okay. Anyone else? Andrew?
Yeah, so as a high school student, I know that there are a lot of great history electives. Like I personally took civic case studies. It was a great class. But I know that a lot of students, when they're selecting courses, especially like history courses that aren't like the core courses that are required, they tend to select courses that are more high level, like L5s or APs. And that's why they tend to lean to other courses versus like these amazing history electives. So I know there's like an AP World History.
Yeah.
Is there any thought of like incorporating that at the high school, like an AP World History class or some like higher level classes to just generate more interest for these courses?
That's a great question. But you took this civics case study course, and yet got into Brown. So we didn't need to have. But I say it somewhat as a lighthearted joke. But I mean, were you almost persuaded not to take that course because it wasn't a level 5?
Actually, originally my course didn't have that. It was actually a place filler course because I needed like a half credit, and that just happened to fit. That's the honest answer. But yeah, after taking the course, like the things I learned weren't like just like academics. It was more like outside of the classroom things.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, the whole AP. You probably know this as a school committee that the private schools have moved away from APs for some very legitimate reasons, whereas the public schools seem to be stuck with APs because they factor into your GPA and a perception that they're better courses, which they aren't necessarily. So, that said, world history there should be an elective on world history, I would think, in the high school. So I take your point, whether it's AP or not. Okay. That's part of what we need to have there. But is your sense that there are a number of students who wanted the AP world history and couldn't get it?
I know like AP US history becomes a really popular course mainly because of that name. It's like I know like that's like that shouldn't be the main reason, but the fact of the matter is that that's just what like students gravitate towards is like these AP courses.
Right.
So.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good feedback. Thank you, Andrew.
Very good feedback.
One of the problems with the AP system is that it's heavily content driven. And so when you teach an AP history course, for instance, there's a lot of just straight up rote memorization. There's certainly some document-based analysis, but if you aren't aware of when the Gadsden purchase happened, you won't be able to answer the question. So it's a particular take on history that seems to go against the kind of philosophy that privileges critical thinking. I had a question as well about the pre-K to 6 social studies coordinator. I see that you used a teacher innovation position for that to roll that into the temporary, but there isn't yet a permanent, but we've approved it for next year. And so will there be a hiring process, or is someone already slotted for that? Or?
We will be posting the position soon.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great.
As a matter of fact, no, it hasn't. It'll be within a week.
Is there interest in the person who currently occupies the position?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah.
there's a lot of movement going on right now, so. Lots of things happening on the ground with hiring season. Thank you.
So that was a very thoughtful discussion. Thank you for the report, Daniel.
You're welcome.
We're going to move right along to student handbooks. We've had a review of the red line changes for 6 of the schools, and it was in our purview. It's in our purview to review and give feedback. Would anyone like to give feedback? Having looked at 6, or should I say 4 handbooks, because the elementary has become 1.
And certainly I can tell you that, typically some years more than others, there's updates. Right now it's pretty much a standard rollover. Some of the stuff is cleanup where they realize they might have items that, for example, the high school hadn't carried the homework policy regarding holidays in their handbook. So they added that in. Most of the ones that you're going to see currently are updates and clarification of, small tweaks. I would say between now and next week when you approve them, the thing to do is skim them and call me if you have any questions. I think the one that has any particular changes at all might be the high school. When you look at it, it probably has, there's mostly updates, but there's a couple like line tweaks. They brought the participation in sports eligibility in alignment with the MIAA's guidelines to match ours, things like that. So I can certainly, if you look at them, it won't take you too long. I think the elementary one, there's none. They just have updating of dates. And I think Gibbons as well has none. And Mill Pond, I think, had 1 or 2 small tweaks. So if you want to direct your attention to kind of giving them a look between now and when you approve them next week, you feel free to call Daniel or I about any questions with regard to the high school ones.
Okay, that would be fine. The holiday policy, which I will say, the updates for the high school I thought were genius. Like they were really well thought out, and I thought they were great additions, especially, and also the elementary had a section that I thought was fabulous. The holiday policy, which is in the elementary one and the high school, it seems to be missing from Gibbons and Mill Pond. Am I wrong? Did anyone else see the holiday policy in the 2?
It's not in Gibbons under homework.
So I just wanted to point that out. Overall, I think it's a fabulous handbook. I mean, it's very good, and it's very well done, and all of them have great links and ability to utilize.
We can email them and get a continuity. I didn't see that because I only looked at the red line change, and I thought they were already carrying them. So I know they release them annually and put out the dates. I know Jack does that, and so does Peter, but I think having it shadowed in the handbook is effective as well. So I'll make sure that they drop those in. Good feedback.
And one of the high school one mentions the school committee, and it just hasn't been updated. So it doesn't show a red line change on that. Sarah DeLay is still on it. Steve Batchelor is not.
Looked.
What page is that?
One of the first pages.
You have pages? I'll look.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't put a page.
Oh, general information.
General information.
Oh, yeah. We have to put Lisa as the chair.
Thank you.
And Steve Batchelor comes on. But that's all I saw.
No, thank you. That's why it's a group effort. I mean, they've tried to really step up and do them earlier and get them done so that you can take a look at them.
No, they did a great job. They all did a great job. And there has been so many improvements over the last few years in the handbooks, so.
Yeah, we've definitely stepped up our game on them, and we need to keep them current and fresh and workable.
Okay. So we're going to move right along to the update on the high school roof chillers. Dave, were you going to walk us through that?
I'm sorry. I'm going to call a point of order here. Do we need to approve the student handbooks?
Oh.
Next week.
Next meeting.
Next week.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, good question. We're going to review, send any comments to Amber, and then potentially vote
for public record rollover. It's always good that you have like one, and then if you have any questions, if you look at them, then you approve them a second time.
Thank you.
Okay, high school roof chillers.
Sure, this will be a brief update. We, myself and Amber, sat with Kelly Diacapello related to chillers, and as you know, certain things have happened since the town meeting that have kind of escalated their way up. The Armstrong roof and some work on the HVAC at the Hastings discussion, things of that nature. A kind of a high level global sense where we're at is that we have some moderately meaning within the last few months quotes from the engineering companies related to the chillers. As we mentioned in some of our previous meetings related to inflations, cost, supply chain issues, materials, and availability. The projection for next realistic steps is sometime out. So we're being mindful of that, but at the same time, where we are ready, I would say, is to go to, which would be the next step of the design, bid, build, and try to get some solid numbers on a more accurate sense as what it's going to cost to do the chillers, which is inclusive of the roof and the structural procedures area below the chillers. So we in fact have a total composite. We're cognizant of what we were approved of at town meeting, so we're being mindful of that. I think for us, the best thing is to proceed with the vendor, and we're going to do that so we have some more particular and hard numbers to provide with you and to the town side as to what's going on related to that. I think the biggest caveat for us is on the timeline related to first getting assessment as to when it can happen. And if it's, say, next summer or next year, I think we're going to need some guidance, not only from, the vendor, some expertise with you guys as to, from a procurement standpoint, when is the best time to go? Do we want to hedge the market and, secure a number now where the number is going to be inflated? Do we want to see what happens with the COVID and supply chain issues and then go from there? But we're at the phases we're ready to, start the procurement process. I think we just need some additional guidance as to what's more feasible and what's the best outcome related to the actual execution of the chillers in a timeline. So I think that's where the caveat is for us, is the question mark as to now or later based on cost.
So when you're looking for expertise, are you looking for that answer to come from the designer or from, let's say, a view of the school committee, or what do you actually mean by?
Yeah, I think for us, we're ready to get to go out to bid or to get the quote on the cost.
Yeah, but is it a fixed price?
That's the thing, is we're not sure if what we should do. I think
Well, it has to be a fixed price because, as we've talked about before, the town meeting is not going to vote a bubble.
Yep.
We just don't have the freedom to say, well, okay, we know these things are going to happen to the price we have today. Because as you now have experienced, and we've all experienced, that if it's a best guess by an engineering house or an architect, yep, it's not good enough in this time frame. So actually, I think what you should do is consider the type of contract that you're going to use, which is the design, bid, build, and then have a fixed price, and therefore the timing of that process would be you need the fixed price quote. You have 30 days, usually with a bid, to make the award. Yep. And as you know from talking to Bob, you can't make the award unless you have the money allocated.
That's right.
So that means you actually have 2 seasons of the year where you can do this.
Yep.
One is the annual town meeting in March, yep, or the fall town meeting. And if you really have a problem, obviously we could ask the Board of Selectmen to call a special town meeting for that. And that has happened before.
Okay.
The other is the kind of contract that we have at Fails, which is a maximum price contract from, let's say, incomplete documents, okay? Which is, to do that, I can't remember the state law, but it's like 149 something, yep, 149B. And the only thing you need there is an authorization from the, I think it's the State Attorney General.
Okay.
Okay, and so you make the request, can we bid it this way? And if they say yes, and I think the magnitude of these contracts are such that they probably would allow you to do that, then you have the freedom to have a fixed price number from a process that's still floating.
Okay.
as we did at Fails.
Okay.
So I think those are your only two options.
Yep.
And you know, we've been hammered a few times by town meeting by not necessarily having that type of true cost
Yep.
contract. And, you know, properly so. The town meeting wants to know when anybody comes forward and requests money, whether that's it.
Yep.
Or whether there's, you know, a plus or minus 30%. And in today's market, it's probably plus or minus 40.
Yep.
And we're working with, looking at the state bid list, looking at the company, which.
We use RFM.
And RFM is on the.
It's a preferred vendor by the town of Westborough. So they're on, we're hoping that we can execute them without, you know, going out. But again, we'll have to cross
Yeah.
the caveats on all the channels related to the fixed pricing and the timeline.
On a unit award, that is a bid process that's already happened.
Yep.
You know, for an annual basis before the state, which DPWs, for example, use that method for everything. And so to the extent that this is a thing that's on the state's bid list, then you're good to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we have good options in front of us. I think we want to look at, we have some updated reports from that company, and we'll take a look at what they're saying about where they need to do some additional design, and we'll keep you guys updated. And I think between now and end of year, you know, we already have an approved article. I think the trajectory of whether or not they'll fund it from ARPA or whether they fund it from the voted town meeting, we're going to proceed forward, and we'll keep you updated on getting in the queue to do the project. So
We're talking over $1 million, right?
Yeah.
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 So that forces under state law, and I'll say that with quotes because there are things that are sloppy, but it requires that there is a designer involved.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
And therefore, you know, drawings, we hope, are quality drawings that eliminate misunderstandings. And of course, bigger the project, the more likely those things happen.
Yep.
I could be wrong, but isn't open bid laws for more than $1 million, you need to go for an open bid, right? You cannot go with preferred vendors.
That would be true.
Yeah, the preferred vendors would be, you get 3 quotes from preferred vendors and you award the work to one of them below a certain amount of money. But anything over that, you should go out
absolutely.
to the open market.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, the stewardship of that is, I think would be diligent for us to do that.
Yeah, I think it's, at this point, we are left with just one option.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So thank you for the feedback. I just want to keep you, as I said, I feel like the articles we have, you know, voted from town meeting are beginning to take trajectory plans forward, and we'll keep you updated.
So we'll move right along to superintendent's goals.
Yeah, all right. So again, we're at the stage of the year. You have one more meeting between now and the final meeting when you'll complete my review. So there's the composite pieces that I bring to you to help you do some of that reflection. I want to frame it around a couple of pieces, which is I think it's helpful as you look at looking at my reflection to also recognize that you have the state rubric where you can see that for any of the 4 major categories, there's a wide array of things that are housed under it that cover the scope of work that I do with the team. And then you have in my personal goals, areas within those strands where I did particular focus work. So, you know, when you're looking at management and operations, you're looking at all the fiscal responsibilities, all the building project work, all of the general policy implementation, but then you also have some areas of focus that I'm holding out to you where I did some particular work. So I think the best way to come at I'll step you through my self-assessment, and I don't think we need to do it in depth. Obviously, you can read it. I'm going to skim it for you, and it's available to you as a self-reflection. And then I'm going to skim you through how to look at the survey data, which I'll give you, and I'll release it to you on Friday, and you can use the survey data to help you. I'm going to talk a little bit about it in global terms tonight, and those will be tools that you can use. I think you have to look at the composite of the presentations you were done, my work with the budget, our work as a team on the development of the strategic plan. Those are all anchor pieces that you can use to fold in and add to different pieces. So in terms of giving you an overview tonight, I'm going to skim you through how to kind of look at the way that I did this self-assessment, all right? Again, you see that from my mid-year assessment, which I did in red, you got feedback on my progress on those goals. And then when you scroll down, you'll see a summation. So for example, I'm always going to give you exemplary proficient, needs improvement, or unsatisfactory, or kind of a range of topics that target my self-assessment. I think in the general focus of the work that we carried this year around general overview for my personal general focus goals. One, maintaining the implementation of the trajectory to manage COVID through the end of the pandemic, hopefully, and through this year. And then the second part of that, really looking at some of the larger pieces of other projects. So the thing that I selected as the overarching goal, because it's continued to kind of be the overlay of the district, was to hold on to the work around COVID. I certainly acknowledge, and I've kind of giving you a summation there around areas where I felt like I met the target or exceeded the work that we did in that range. I think, the year's been long, you kind of forget. Like I had to go back and be like, oh, we started masked. We moved towards mid-season survey work and transition to unmasked, to move to flex masking, to implement the at-home test protocols, and to stabilize all of the transition and all of our new procedures. That was all this year. And as we look at the trajectory of that work, one of the objective goals was for me to pull back the amount of large group work it was taking to manage that. And so the decision was, for good or for bad, in areas where it would then lead to maybe a vacuum of missing pieces, which, we've acknowledged. We've had some pretty serious areas of agreement and disagreement across the span of the year around my handling of that, was to really alleviate the core team of the need to be in long working meetings around COVID and to release them back to do the work that they needed to do. So my overall feeling about that work is that I noted it as exemplary because I feel like overall the district has done well. And so I kind of hold that up there for summation, and I give you a brief, in the fuchsia lovely finalization color, a summarization of that for you. And I indicate that, like all of you, I'm exhausted from the pandemic and feel like I would really hope to welcome the school year with it not being a defining feature goal for my work. And Daniel, maybe you could just scroll down so people can see. So that's the summation of that there, just kind of looking at, I just think it's hard in hindsight when you think where we are to kind of remember back to where we were and the amount of work it's been. I think it's only been a month that we haven't had the annual update of the COVID protocols shaping the start of the meeting. But we've continued to post our numbers to the state, to manage the substitute cycles, to do everything that it's taken to keep the district moving forward. And when you move into Standard 1 for instructional leadership has the whole array. And again, I think I would encourage you to look at the rubric and you can see all the indicators under that. So that picks up, for example, assessment. It picks up curricular work. If you look at, you have to look to aspects of Daniel's report and our shared work, of which I play a piece in supportive leadership, to implement the K-2 phonological awareness work and to participate in implementing the Dibble's assessments and getting a rotation of data, as well as the well-received health and wellness screenings that we added this year and gathering data, all have been part of the trajectory of this year that kind of fall underneath that instructional leadership arm. And the part where I'm holding up very specific work to you centers around the development of the long-range strategic plan. And I noted this arena as exemplary. I'm exceptionally proud that we got the amount of targeted instructional goals and development of work completed during what was an incredibly impacted year with COVID. And if you scroll down, you'll see, just a summation that I really am exceptionally proud of the development of the strategic plan. I think it's comprehensive. I think it's current. It's updated, having experienced the first one and shepherded the introduction of that into the district. I don't feel like there's many pieces of my work that I actually say are mine. But the decision to come to the district and to set an expectation that we would develop a comprehensive long-range plan was something that I felt was a piece of my core goal in coming here. And I think that I shepherd holding on to that and keeping it something we care about. I think our individual faculty and leadership team care about the individual pieces of the work. I feel strongly that how it all fits together and keeping a cohesive voice on it and being able to track our progression on it and being accountable to the community and to the school committee, that the large framework of the strategic plan helps us do that. I don't produce a ton of written documentation for you on the work of the district. I tend to be slim in that area, but I believe this document carries a vast majority of a reflection of very robust work in our district. So I feel very good about that. I'm looking forward to the interactive component of that document, having a little bit more life, breathed into it. And I look forward to working on it this summer with the team. The other core area that impacted an area of focus for me where I was a strong participant this year across a whole array of curricular work, some of the highlights I just mentioned to you, but our work around looking at DEI practices across our district, which was a call where our faculty asked for that, families, and a general focus of our work intensifying in that area. I think it's really essential that we recognize that DEI is equity and inclusion as well, and the strong arm of work that we've had around looking at inclusive practices to make sure that students with unique and special learning needs are fully included in least restrictive, most inclusive setting and typical school experience in the trajectory of their Westborough experience. And we've done a lot of good work around making sure that the equity of the curricular approach has given them access and is really robust across all of those arenas. We've done work around just the whole celebration and recognition around identity and really wanting to make sure that people feel that everyone here is welcome and included. And I think that the work that we did with Liza this year was positive. She really helped people think about individual identity and recognize that we need to make sure we know our own identity and our own self well so that we can bring our best self to our kids. I think that there's plenty for you to read there that I provided for you, and I'll leave that for you. I think the other aspect of that work that I would acknowledge, I think has a lot of growth to make. It was an imperfect process, but well-intended, was our DEI team, which I think, got its feet under it and got started. But I think there's a general sense from the committee of wanting more, wanting to do more, and needing to have our purpose evolve. And so I think, earnestly, we were clear with them that we were all going to find our way in that together. And it's a working group. It's not like we have it all figured out and we come and we just kind of present to them. And I think that's a different framework sometimes for faculty to be folded into. It can feel a little amorphous and a little undirected. And it takes time for a team to learn to kind of bring in the things they want to work on. And I see good things ahead for us. And I think that will continue to be an important goal heading into next year. I think we'll see additional people add into that committee, and we'll look to keep it, a cohesive team of people who can really give us a wide-ranging voice from across the district.
Are any high school kids involved in that committee?
The DEI team is faculty across the full array of faculty. I do think that different purposes at that time, but I certainly think one of the things we're looking at is increasing teacher leadership and student leadership across the district kind of as components. So they participate on the town DEI team as well and a variety of things, but not as of now. Could be possible.
Something to consider.
Yeah, no, interesting feedback. I agree. So when you look into the next arena of management and operations, that's a huge umbrella of what it is in district, and I think you need to look at the rubric to see that. I tried to highlight a couple pieces of it for you in my summation. The main area there that I held out was just the work that had to continue to happen around fails, of which I'm one participant, certainly in no way essential to that, but a meaningful participant I've tried to be. Our work internally around welcoming and onboarding two amazing new people to the central office team is more about support. It's not like I'm training in that sense. It's about pacing our work together and finding out how to unpack the stages and develop our own identity for how we want to function together as colleagues. And I think same for TAM and then the interface of all of that as we've added some new people to their offices as well. So, a lot was going on in the arena of that work, and looking at the capital process, still feeling very new and somewhat, a trajectory of different for all of us. Looking at the workflow in the business office, I feel like we really did a good job with Dave coming on board and really finalizing, working with TAM and the cabinet group, looking at the workflow there for how to get the right people working on the right pieces. And then you heard Tam speak some about the Munis work. We have more to do there. I indicate that we're below the target on the Munis in some areas, but above target on Dave's trajectory to pick up the MCPPO, which is a substantial amount of work and coursework for him to do, and he has been doing this year so that he can carry the signature and all of the competency strands necessary across that work. And he and I made some headway in, again, his skill to visualize data with a strength. And, he carried, for the first time in my career experience, the weight of giving me the scaffold of the presentations and having them ready to go, which was, a breath of fresh air. And I think we look forward to doing more with that. I think we have some picture around the budget book really continuing to innovate. So that's work where I feel like we're on target, but that's been impacted by pick-upping speed and setting things aside. It's been certainly a hectic year. I highlight to you that it's important that you realize that around that, that's budgeting, it's all of the initiatives around management of projects and all of that. And I think that in that arena, I've had a good year and feel like the weight of the volume of work in this arena has been huge. And certainly an area of time and energy and leadership. And I've given you things to read there. You don't need me to recount them to you. And then the last major arena, the family and community engagement and the professional culture strands, I've indicated that I feel I met a proficiency benchmark in those two. So, I try to be like self-reflective about areas where I don't feel like I'm hitting the benchmarks of how I want to perform in those areas. And I certainly feel like I met those and I'm proficient, but certainly I feel like the weakness of the impact of the years in the last 2 years around my feelings about those arenas. I think they are fatigued, in some ways, and need to be picked up. There's certainly areas of having met the benchmarks there. I've plugged back into a lot of stuff. I'm working on the ground again with attending a lot of things, and that really blows up my calendar a little bit, but I'm trying to get that rhythm back. I would indicate that, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when I look at the family and community engagement. You'll see in the survey data, I would say that and I'll just echo it in here because I think it impacts my feelings about it, which is, I feel like we had improved the quality and strand of our celebratory and informational communication in the district around kind of things going on. And then we hit COVID, and for the last 2.5 years, it's been nothing but communication about protocols and COVID and numbers. And there has been less space we had amazing merit scholars, and we've done this, and here's new curriculum initiatives. And, I feel that there's been a receding of that from my work, and I think people feel they're seeing kind of general rollout of content without a lot of new things. So I think that impacts my feelings around this arena of proficiency. I would say in the area of feedback from families, and you'll see it yourself, there's a bell curve of perspective on some people feeling that we're spending too much time on the DEI work and that it's consuming way too much energy, and you'll see those feelings, and they impact people's perspective on my leadership, and they feel that it's an overemphasis. And that, they're not happy about that. So there's a portion of people that you'll see that represented in the feedback. I think the other arena of feedback where you can see a bell curve of perspective is around, again, how we handled COVID and people's feelings about my work in that arena, having failed their perspective or having met it. So, I just think that while I feel that I met a proficiency benchmark for you, I'm not comfortable, acknowledging that as exemplary in any way when there's people unhappy and that bell curve feels like it's really been pressed by all of us in the experiences we've had. So that really is, you'll look to the feedback data as a way that gives you, and then also my comments. And I think when you look at the arenas in the rubric, you'll pick up on areas where, like, oh, she did well in this, or you have your feelings, which is fine. There are some people, I would say from the faculty standpoint, who feel like I was less present in schools. There's no doubt that my walkabouts at the building level were impacted by the sense that I was spending more time talking with the principals for a more extended track. And so one of the things I've noted I want to flip is walking first. You just have to, so that you're out first and then processing second. Because not ill-intentioned, but when I sit down first, we're sometimes chewing into that second rotation to visit. And I think, that's just a kind of a mechanics thing that impacted. They can see me coming in the building, but they feel like I'm not on the ground with them. Some people feel like I don't talk with them enough when I'm there. There's kind of a weird balance of whether or not you're interrupting people when you go in and out of classes. So, it's an imperfect structure, but, again, I think efforts to good work, but you'll see their feelings in there. And I think that's true around the components around professional culture. There's a lot that folds into professional culture. I feel like the term professional culture is kind of like how people feel about the being here and the experience of how people on the outside experience us professionally. It's a little more granular than that when you look at the rubric, but it tends to be kind of my emotional response to that. I marked it as proficient. And I think you'll see the arenas where I noted, my areas of focus. Again, I think the DEI work has been merited, and I stand by that. I also take the direction of the school committee, and it's an arena where you wanted to see more work. And I think we heard from certainly a majority of parents that they wanted, and students, that they wanted us to do better on the ground. We certainly heard from, them as well. But there's a bell curve of opinions about that, and you'll pick that up. And again, the authentic and connected relationships. I feel like the work with WLT is certainly, I said met, I won't say exceeded, but we maintain our schedule. And I think there's a lot of times when the impact of what that calendar looks like to be 2 hours in a building on a regular rotation weekly is, a lot. And I think we feel good about it, but it definitely is the vast majority of what defines, big chunks of my time. And I think the written work with them is an area where I need to do a mid-year assessment, and I didn't this year. And it should be a standard part of my practice that I give them a mid-year snapshot and then the end of year in writing. I do the end of year summative, but the mid-year I've passed on, and I need to build that into my repertoire. So I'm left unsatisfied with my performance in that arena because, they should expect that from me, and I'm not hitting that benchmark for them. They also sometimes feel like I'm a little less available because we've been stretched, but I respect that feedback, and you'll see that. I think, again, I gave you an overall summation. So I gave myself an overall proficiency rating for the year, and you can clearly hear my fatigue in the closing paragraph. Like, I want to wrap up the year. I definitely am, impacted like all of us from the perspective that it's important to get breaks, and we haven't really had some in some ways. And I think, all professionals know you go through highs and lows in your work, and it can be hard to keep your energy high. And I think, I wouldn't characterize it as anywhere near one of my better years, but, certainly proficient and committed to the work. We've had a good year, but it's been hard. I think I said to Lisa when we met on this, the teachers get an opportunity to step away, and they can make selective choices at times, and I'm hoping that they can get away from here and renew, and they're looking forward to it. The core leadership team, they're dropping lots of vacation days that they haven't been able to expend after 2 years, and they're feeling that. So trying to find ways to give them breaks and let them kind of come back fresh so we can start the work of the year. So that's my self-report for the year. I'm going to have, Daniel, do you want to pop open the parent survey? 2 things. So on the parent survey, I'll just show you how you'll see that. Currently, it has 215 pieces of feedback in it. I'm going to push another reminder tomorrow to people, and you certainly can email your friends and tell them to give me feedback. Currently, the summary on that is, percentage-wise, proficient to solid. I think the comments are where the heart of, the emotional components, you can feel those. People are pretty abrupt, at times, and also generous of spirit. You'll see a full bell curve of that. But right now, I would say that my overall proficiency rating is certainly solid with the people that have weighed in. And then if you look at the teacher one, I'll flip over to there.
Just on this, just so you know, over here on the form responses is where you can see the comments and all the data. I don't know if, who on the team wants to do charts like this. If you want to do charts like that, you can go to the original form. You have access to it from here, but it doesn't put it in percentage terms. So it'll show some bar charts that you can take a look at to get a sense, but if you're looking for, percentages, but otherwise, if anybody wants help with how to figure
we'll
that out.
organize it so that you can read it and see it. I think we'll give you the Excel spreadsheet, or the Google spreadsheet does give you that, but it is kind of nice to see kind of some of the snapshot of the way that you could get the graphs.
This is the
So then the
data from the teachers.
Yeah.
And there's a few different pie charts that we put in there.
Yeah. So we'll convert the general, I mean, he can share these with you. He converted them. You're very nice, Daniel. I see you did that quickly. Gives you, again, I think, for me, the essence of it's in the feedback. I mean, I tend to benchmark similarly over a couple years. I would say that there's a for me a feeling of kind of a measurable, if I think about it, kind of swing in the sense that it's there's probably a better balance of a mix of proficient and exemplary, like people that leaned towards proficient as opposed to exemplary in their assessment. Like if you look at like year over year data, I don't think it speaks to like dissatisfaction per se, but I think that they definitely feel the impact of, I like her less this year. She's making me really crazy. She's proficient. I'm not in love with her though. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I'm just saying that's the truth of data, and I accept that. That's important. I mean, and I think some of it's, we live close together, during the year. And so those are available to you. I would say overall, again, I think the data says that, I'm solid here for you, but I think that, you'll want to look at the comments as the arena that gives you the flavor. So I'll organize that and release it. I can't remember, and I was going to talk to Kristen afterwards. I can't remember kind of how I pushed some of that. So we could talk after the meeting and I can queue it up so that you guys have what you need. All right. So those you'll receive, like you said, my self-assessment. You'll get the data and you can see that available. And then you have, I think it's helpful if you flip back through some of your meetings and you can see presentations. Certainly, without saying that the budget process is a giant part of also the trajectory of our work. So I would say that's it for tonight.
Okay, I'm just going to remind everyone that did everyone receive the Google form?
Yeah.
That is due back June 1st. And I'm just going to reiterate that Amber had mentioned that although she wrote about her goals and assessed them embedded in a much larger framework. So when you go through the rubric, you'll discover so many other specific areas that she may not have mentioned that you find important to the district that you're welcome to write about. There are just a wide array of things within those 4 categories. Anyone have any questions? June 1st is your due date. I also want to remind you that Amber is very hard on herself, and that shows in her assessment. And just keep that in mind. I'm just going to put that out there. And why? Because she has very high standards, which she emulates and definitely models through her leadership. We appreciate that. So we're going to move right along to finalizing our school committee meeting dates for 2022-23. Does anyone have any questions about any of those dates that are out there? Or did everyone feel that, well, feel free to discuss.
They made sense to me. I think, it sort of like front loads the fall in terms of more dates in November and just that one in December, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it's a little, Dave and I looked at it for the budget impact,
Yeah.
in terms of timing. So I think we can pace against that.
Okay.
But because of the timing of a
Holidays.
couple of things this year, it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So any other thoughts? We ready to, is there a motion to approve? And I recognize that we don't need to vote these. We really just need to approve them. Anyone have any thoughts about that, whether we should be voting them in?
What's the difference between voting them and approving them? In my mind,
One is just procedural, and,
it has the same impact, and
It
that's
has the
all that
same
matters.
impact.
Yeah, I mean, I said to Lisa, by design, the chair is in charge of the dates of the school committee, has the right to call a meeting, has a right to change a meeting, and can post and manage I think building our calendar is a discussion item. You know, you can choose to approve them in concept, but it doesn't require a vote. Again, procedurally, I think we've done it different ways, different years. I mean, I think at this point you can accept them or you can choose to. It basically says, what does it say, finalize?
I don't think we need to vote on that.
Yeah.
Because we can, we have the authority to change.
Yeah,
over
it says
time.
finalize, not vote,
Yeah.
so it's just an acknowledgement, and I think you guys should, I don't think you need to vote them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree that it's a working document, and to the extent that we have a need to make a change in the schedule, then that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would just say we acknowledge that it was on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, and we have finalized the dates as of right now. Okay,
Dates.
that is great. So we will move right along. We're moving to voting on the stipends for 2022-23. We reviewed them 2 weeks ago, and we're now we're at the point where if there's any discussion or a motion to vote in the stipends for 2022-23. Do we have a motion?
I'll move the motion to vote in the stipends as.
Second.
And is there any discussion about the stipends? Okay, so we're ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a 5-0 vote approving the stipends for 2022-23.
Thanks, we'll get them posted. They go up right away. People have been asking, so that's good.
The next meeting of the school committee is scheduled for Wednesday, June 8th. That is the last of our regularly scheduled programming for this academic year, unless unforeseen circumstances. I feel like I have to say that for the last 3 years, but you never know. And so do we have a vote to meet in an executive session?
Sure. I make a motion to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to possible litigation, and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to review and approve executive session minutes from December 15th, 2021, and April 29th, 2022.
So do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Steve Batchelor?
Aye.
So you would say Batchelor, yes?
Oh, Bachelor, yes.
Kristen?
Vincent, yes.
Raghu?
Nandan, yes.
And Steve?
Correct, yes.
And Edinburgh, yes. This meeting is adjourned, or moving into executive session is what I meant.